In recent news, New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced the launch of Cannabis NYC. It's the first of a kind initiative in suite services to support the equitable growth of cannabis industry here in New York City. Well, not only will Cannabis NYC boost the city's economy and provide New Yorkers with job opportunities, new job opportunities, I might add, it'll also do so while addressing the harm done to Black and brown communities during the cannabis prohibition. Well, we got a chance to speak with the founder and the president of the Black Institute, Bertha Lewis, Justice Impacted Applicant, Lovell Lee Jr., and Latino Cannabis Association's co-founder, Jeffrey Garcia, and Vice President Sandra Jáquez to share their insights on this whole discussion.
And we thank you all for joining us for a very healthy discussion. And I think, first of all, I'll start, Jeff. We talked about this before. Here we are again. Give us where we are in terms of equity, because I think that's the question that's really on the hearts and minds of many people. We know that many in the brown community have been criminalized when it comes to cannabis. Now the opportunity for it to be legalized, and also for those in the Black and brown community to be able to reap of in form of business.
Well, thank you so much, Daren, for having us on. And thank you to the rest of my panelists here, Ms. Lewis, Sandra, and one of our applicants in our association, Lovell. So where we are is that now the first card program came out a couple of weeks ago. 36 licenses for conditional retail were handed out, 8 to nonprofits, and 8 to nonprofits and 28 to individuals who were impacted due to the war on drugs, specifically with cannabis-specific convictions. And those folks will be the first ones to have legal dispensaries here in the state of New York and in the city of New York.
So, Bertha, let me ask you, talk to me about what your experience is right now, and what are you looking to see happen?
Well, we at the Black Institute have worked on getting cannabis legalized in New York State literally for decades. Why? Because, as our name implies, we are the Black Institute, and so our lens is through social justice and advocacy issues regarding people of color, particularly Black and brown folks. So when we finally last year passed the Marijuana Recreational Use Act, we worked hard to make sure there was a social equity component to that. And I think what is significant about New York State, even though we're in our infancy, is that the social equity component was there in the very beginning. That was the first thing that New York State did, unlike other states who had legalized recreational use before. However, the Black Institute's task is to make sure that we do oversight of New York State's cannabis industry, to make sure that it isn't just in name only or in words that we talk about social equity and making wrongs finally right for those that were disproportionately affected. So not only with collaboration of the Latino Cannabis Association, we will be putting out an annual report. We anticipate it being on 4/20, which is significant for those in the cannabis industry, but we want to do it every year. We understand that New York State is at its infancy, and we want to make sure that we contribute to making it better and better and better. As Jeff said, there were only 36 licenses out of 150 that were issued statewide here in New York City. So we want to make sure that we are getting treated fairly, that we are not being taken advantage of, that people actually get real training and real education about the cannabis industry and about the law here, and what the opportunities as well as some of the pitfalls to avoid as we move forward into 2023 with this, and making sure that our communities that will be impacted so greatly finally can see justice.
Yeah. Lovell, let me bring you into the conversation. I mean, you have the opportunity to be an applicant. Talk to us about, first of all, why you applied and a little bit of your history.
So I'm a triplet born and raised in the South Bronx by my two parents, Margaret Lee and Lovell Lee. My dad, unfortunately, was incarcerated for 5.5 years. After I was about 17 months, he had to go away and do some time because of the use of cannabis. Having my dad stripped away from us and now seeing how this can become a lucrative industry is part of the reason why we decided to, ultimately apply for a license so that we could reap the benefits of the time lost from my dad, but then to also, repair that void in the community and bring, more awareness that we can legalize marijuana, but also do it in a recreational fashion and also do it appropriately in the community.
Yeah. And so when we look at this right now, we understand that there have been some licenses that have been given. Let's talk about the licenses that have been given and from your perspective, the equity that was involved in the distribution. How do you feel about that?
Like most situations, Black and brown people are always disproportionately given less. So it's no real shocker that only 36 out of 150 were given out statewide. Our only hopes moving forward is that we're brought to the table and given more resources and also a chance, because like many people in New York State and other states, this is something new. This is the new business that a lot of people are trying to capital on, but they may not do it correctly. I think having people like LCA and the Black Institute behind us, we can actually push the narrative that cannabis use can be done recreationally and appropriately in the community, but then also our underserved people like our Black and brown and BIPOC folks can also start reaping the benefits of the things that were once incarcerating us as a mass.
Yeah. Sandra, let me bring you in and talk a little about, from a Latino perspective, give us your thoughts as to, we talked about how many people got licenses, that disparity in that. What are you looking to see?
Well, like Lovell just mentioned, I myself am I'm an applicant as well. I was also impacted, not personally, but family-wise. So just to see that finally we're going to get a chance, opportunity to participate in an industry that we were so much, punished for. And now we could probably have lucrative businesses in this industry. It's a beginning, it's a start. We still have a lot of work to do. That's one of the reasons why Jeffrey created the LCA, to give us Latinos and our Black and brown folks the opportunity, to participate in this industry that is so so minute to us Latinos. I mean, a lot of people don't understand our Black and browns. There's less than 1% of actual businesses that are owned by us. So we need to change that. We need to change the narrative. New York is, trying to do the right thing for people who were impacted, but there's still a lot of work. There's still a lot of education that needs to be done, a lot of awareness, and a lot of advocacy for our people, so we could make sure that we have a seat in the table and that all our, Black and browns do get the opportunity to participate in this industry. That's very lucrative.
Yeah.
Darren,
So,
if I could
go
chime
ahead, Jeff.
in
I was going to bring you in. Go ahead.
real
You got
quick,
it.
and if I could just chime in, women in the industry, Black and brown women, are even less than that. So it's very important to make sure that our female entrepreneurs get involved. The Latino Cannabis Association, half of our membership is women. So that was something we were very intentional about. But before I go any further, I just want to be clear. The 36 licenses that were given out primarily were in New York City. There were some outside the city, but that is only the first round out of the 150. It wasn't that the 150 were given out already. That
Right.
The 150 number is the goal of that initial card program, and only 36 licenses were granted in this first round. So we're expecting another round sometime this month of licenses to go out, and then in the subsequent months, additional ones. And then one other thing that came out at that same time were the rules and regulations that are going to govern the overall program. those rules and regulations are going to be going through what they call the comments period, right? Where we get to comment and request changes in what the rules and regulations are right now, which we understand there are a lot of things that we want to comment about and see how we can change to make it more equitable for Black and brown folks. And we're going to be submitting comments. We're going to be sitting with Ms. Lewis and other organizations like Frank White and their group and others, right, to figure out and what comments we want to submit to really make this industry more equitable, right? Because one of the biggest things that we find in our communities is looking for funding. Funding is one of the biggest things that we can get, investor funding, to get into these this business. So we're getting ready for that. But I just want to make sure I clarified that and that was clear on the whole licensing.
Oh yeah, and Bertha, let me ask you this: any concern on your part? Because as we saw, as we said, there's more to be handed out. But if you look at the initial numbers right now, some people could say, "Hey, listen, I've really got some serious concerns. Is this going to get any better in terms of disparity?"
Listen, I totally agree with that observation, and people have a right to. We initially, or the Office of Cannabis Management originally said, okay, 150 licenses statewide. But guess what, folks? There were over 1,000 people that applied. So, how many more rounds will we have? How will the rules change from round to round? What about capital? Your application fee was $2,000 just to apply. But as we've all begun to know, as we get into this industry, number one, every minority business person and entrepreneur knows you have to have capital to set this up. How are you going to build out your retail store? What about advertising? What about marketing? What about making sure that you have the accountants that you need in order to make sure that you're within the law, so that, we're anticipating getting all of this tax revenue. But guess what? The initial recreational retailers, they're in competition with the black market already. We have seen smoke shops sprout up like mushrooms, for lack of a better term. Also, let us talk about health and safety. How do we know that the product that you might be consuming doesn't have something else in it? What kind of controls will we have? How will we build the workforce to work in these retail outlets? And also, not every cannabis related business needs to apply for a license. Our people need to know about ancillary businesses, whether it's legal, whether it's graphics and marketing, whether it's accounting, whether it's delivery, whether it's security, or construction for that matter. So, the cannabis industry is vast and wide, and part of what the Black Institute is doing, along with the Latino Cannabis Association, is one, we want to make sure that we educate our people. And two, as Jeff said, we want to make these comments about the rules and regulations, while they can be changed, how to make them better. We want to participate with the mayor's New York City Cannabis Roundtable. And we also want to connect with other folks of color. There's a brand new, Asian Cannabis Roundtable that has been forming. There's some Muslims, quiet as it's kept, that have been forming. So we want to form networks with all of our people of color. White people can apply too. We're not anti-white people. We just are pro.
Right.
people of
Right.
color. So we want to educate, we want to build a network, we also want to do oversight. So as Sandra said, there's a lot of work to be done, but what is exciting, we can actually do this work. Finally, after decades and generations of families suffering like Lovell's family suffered, you know, if we were disproportionately affected, how come we're not getting a disproportionate number of the licenses? Maybe
I think
true.
that's the big question that I think that a
Okay.
lot of that I'm asking and I'm raising, and of course, you're not the person I need to raise it to, but we will raise it when we get the opportunity to ask that question. But Sandra, talk to me about this, because there is a great amount of preparation by organizations such as yourself, and the work that Bertha is doing in helping people like a Lovell to get to the table, and not just get to the table, but to get across the table. But when you look at this from the initial outset, you're like, okay, got to pay attention to see how this goes. But we can already see, and we already know, as Bertha said, that communities of color have been the ones that have been disproportionately affected.
Right. And that's what we're trying to change. That's what we need to make sure that we are all included in this, because obviously we were the ones mostly impacted. And now we should be the ones, benefiting from this industry that's about to emerge. And that's something that we're advocating in conjunction with, the Black Institute and other institutes and other organizations. How can we get our Black and Browns involved, our minorities, our women? How can we make sure that we are the ones getting awarded these licenses? Because yes, it's wonderful that they started with this 150 card program license, but like Bertha said, 1,000 people applied. 1,000 people applied just for this first round. So imagine how many other people who didn't qualify for this portion of the application, how many other people are waiting in line, like myself, like the Lovells, waiting to try to get this opportunity to get these licenses awarded. How many of us are really going to get these licenses? So we got to make sure that we are in the front line, that we are, working hard in conjunction with the mayor, with the OCM, with everyone, to make sure that our social equity components are the ones that are actually benefiting and getting award these licenses.
Lovell, let me bring you back and put you on the spot a little bit, because when we talk about trying to get ready for things, even with grants, I've heard it from people who've said trying to get a state grant, trying to get state contracts, trying to deal in that kind of area has been an arduous task, and sometimes very uphill. What's the process been like for you, just to be able to submit your application? Give us a little background as to how hard it was and what you had to do.
Firstly, the paperwork, it's extensive, but it's necessary. I think, just as a overall, working with my dad and having to unpack like all these old traumas of everything that he faced, and then also being reflective on what he faced and how that affected me from his time apart from our family, and then just everything my mom had to do in the absence of raising triplets and an older brother, putting all of that down on paper and just rehashing that story. I feel it's necessary, but to a certain extent, because, a story means everything, especially behind a powerful business. But, just having to rehash all of that hurt and trauma, and then just to see, even with the first round, only 36 people getting it, there are levels to this, and, we're on course to hopefully get our license. But just, understanding that the work was a lot, and some points, they warn me, it can be tedious. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of back and forth. You might have to sign this. It may not come back right. You have to do it again. But, overall, just having to relive that hurt and, all that time, and just re-explaining, my dad was taking me for 5.5 years. I was only 1.5, not having him home, having to go make those visits. And then now seeing this become a very large, lucrative business, but then my dad is still at fault, and he can't be as inclusive in this because now he has a federal record. And I feel like even with the people that were directed significantly first and then their family, I feel like there should be, new laws where we could try to help expunge their records, because there should be no reason that a man that was arrested and incarcerated for 5 years can't participate in something that's making multiple millions of dollars, potentially. So I feel like, thinking about what could be done next in connection to the legalization of cannabis, I think the expungement of anyone who had to serve time should get that time removed so that they could then participate on the legal aspect of this act.
Yeah, Jeff, I mean, we've been talking about this. I mean, give me your perspective. This has been the argument that we've been saying for a long period of time, what Lovell raises.
And I think, yeah, exactly, that point that Lovell raised there is that because it's not federally legal and his father had a federal conviction, even though that arrest was here in New York, right, specifically New York City, unfortunately, his arrest did not let him specifically qualify for that first round. Lovell could have, and Lovell will be able to apply in the overall program, right? And I assume his dad will be able to as well. But because there is no federal legalization, that's another barrier. I know that there's a lot of things going on that the Congress wants to try and pass before the year ends. Safe banking, it's another very important topic in this industry that passes, because again, people need to be able to go to a bank and be able to open up a bank account and not just keep money in safes like they do in other states. So these are very, very important. And one of the things that we do here at the Latino Cannabis Association is make sure that we are sitting with legislators, right? We have a full gamut of people working with us. We have cannabis consultants. We have a lobbying firm that works with us. We have attorneys that work with us, right? So we are trying to stay on top of the complete aspect of the industry. Obviously, our main focus is to get our folks ready to submit licenses once that overall program starts after that comment period. But we really need to stay on top of all these other issues that will make the whole program complete. It is very important to get federal legalization done.
So where do we go from here? As we've been looking at this right here, I'll come back to Bertha. Where do we go from here?
Well, the first thing is to connect, okay? We here are at the Black Institute. You can go to our website, theblackinstitute.org. If you don't have access to the internet, call us on the phone, 212-871-6899. And just to do a little bit of a commercial, this is a couple of months out, but Sandra and Jeff and Lovell mentioned his mother. One of the most forgotten people in the cannabis industry are women in cannabis. And so next year, on March the 9th, during Women History Month, the Black Institute, along with other partners, we are sponsoring the first annual Cannaball, where we're going to honor and recognize women in cannabis. So you contact the Latino Cannabis Association. There's a New York Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. The thing is, reach out, we'll reach out to you. Connection is the first thing. We've got to talk to each other, share with each other, make sure that unlike the past, other people are not trying to split us up. We need to come together as one. So contact the Latino Cannabis Association, contact the Black Institute. If you have questions or you just want to vent or you have an idea, we must connect together, especially now that we're coming to the end of the year and 2023 is going to be critical for all of us.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and ask Sandra jumps in here and give me your thoughts before we get ready to wrap up a little bit.
Well, to piggyback on what Bertha said, I totally agree. Women need to be more involved. We need to communicate. We need to come together so we could educate our people. Education is key. I'm a big advocate for education, just on the whole process, on the plant itself, and everything that has to do with cannabis. You could reach out to any one of us, latinocannabis.org. You could reach out to the Black Institute, and we are more than welcome to answer any questions, help you on your process of trying to obtain these licenses. And just know that we are here working hard day and night, advocating for everyone, Latino, Browns, minorities, women, to try to get these licenses and make this industry in New York historic. We're trying to make it right, not do what other states are doing. So, let's all work together. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we've about out of time, but Lovell, talk to me about your hopes. Optimistic. How do you see things working out in the future?
My one hope is to see my father's time away from us not in vain. And you know, with the connection with the LCA and the Black Institute, I hope that my dad and my family could start to become and be a part of the process of reaping the benefits of a business that everyone else is going to end up reaping the businesses too, especially when a lot of them weren't as significantly impacted as, you know, the ones who are already making profit off this industry. I'm just hopeful that, you know, New York State does it right and, you know, actually takes the comments, the feedback, and ultimately listen to their people, because 9 times out of 10, we know what's best for us because we're living through these conditions. And that's not just with cannabis, that's like on our daily lives. So, you know, just take our comments and our feedback, you know, and take that really to heart so that, you know, moving forward, we won't make the same mistakes as before.
I really thank you guys. I think it's a worthwhile conversation. The conversation will continue to follow. And definitely have to have you all back. We'll update, let people know where we are as the more licenses become available and more things are fleshed out. Definitely want to keep our finger on the pulse. So thank you all for joining us.